Visual Functional Mathematics at Level 1. Part 3, Data Handling. Today's lesson is Lesson 2 on pie charts. You're going to learn about drawing charts, graphs, and pie charts and understanding them. You need to be able to read and understand exam questions and project briefs. You need to be able to learn the definition and purpose of pie charts. You will also learn to draw charts, graphs, and pie charts from briefs or project briefs. You will draw a graph from a set of data, and you'll be able to read and understand graphs and charts. The key words and phrases you should be familiar with and you will be familiar with are graphs, pie charts, line graphs, relationship, project brief, and information. These are words you probably have used time and time again, but this time you're going to dwell on them for a little while when you're doing your questions on each topic we do. Let's begin with pie charts. Pie charts are circular and are divided into sections. The size of each section depends on how much or how many of something it represents. This pie chart shows the most popular equipment at a gym. That's the pie chart you're looking at now. The size of each section shows the proportion of people who prefer that piece of equipment. I'm sure if you've been to the gym before, you'll know what they're talking about. If you've not, I suggest you go to keep you fit. If you look at the pie chart, it's divided into 4 sections. You have treadmills, 180 degrees. You have weights, 60 degrees. And then you have rowing machines, and you've got exercise bikes. You'll be able to figure out the size of those sections later on, but by just looking at them, you can see that the least popular is rowing machines, the most popular is treadmills, and then next to treadmills is exercise bikes. I like exercise bikes as well because I'm lazy. And then of course you got weight, which is 60%. The treadmill section is the biggest, so treadmills are the most popular piece of information or equipment. It's half of the whole chart, 50%. This means that half of the people questioned prefer the treadmill. So you begin to see that to do this type of research, you have to interview people and talk to them about what they're doing. Okay? And then if you look at the other side, the smaller section of the chart, that is the rowing machine. It means that not many people use it really, for whatever reason. This section has an angle of 60 degrees, that is the weight. The angle all the way around the circle is 360 degrees, and 60 degrees is 1/6 of 360. So this means that 1/6 of the people questioned prefer weights to other things. Let's look at practice questions at 1. The manager of a leisure center is looking at the ages of members going to yoga and aerobics classes. A. In which class are adults the most common age group? B. What percentage of aerobics class members are youths? And then C. The manager thinks that 1/8 of the yoga class is made up of youths. Is the manager correct? You need to look at the charts, study them, and understand it. That's what information is about. Yoga, you have adults, you have 45% of youths, and then you have seniors. And then aerobics, you have adults and seniors more or less the same, probably seniors slightly bigger, and then you have youths. I want to draw your attention to the fact that with the youths, you see that square box in the center and pointing to the youths. What does that tell you? That is a quarter of the total size of aerobics class. Okay, so sometimes you're not given the information on a plate, but by understanding the layout and also certain mathematical signs, you'll be able to tell what they mean. And these are the answers. Question 1, A, yoga, B, 25%, and as I told you, C, 45% is 1/8 of 360 degrees. We need to be able to draw bar charts. So how do we do it? Let's look at this example. The main steps are choosing what the axis will represent, choosing a scale for the axis, and plotting or drawing the data. The table shows the monthly sales of a newspaper over 6 months. Draw a bar chart to show this data. A bar chart is appropriate because it's comparing sizes, really. So what is the period? You have January, February, March, April, May, June, if you look at the table on the right. And then you have the newspaper sales in thousands, starting from January 25, February 23, March 24, April 20, May 22, and June 26. That tells you that all of those figures are in thousands. That's why you see the heading newspaper sales and then in brackets thousands. So we need to represent this on a bar chart. Let's go about and see. There are certain rules you have to follow. You need to work out a scale for the axis. Scales mean the size you're going to allocate to the real stuff. This is how the units will be spread out along each axis. If you look at the grid-lined paper where you're going to draw the chart there, you'll see a heading there. Add a title above your graph so that it's clear for people to understand what the graph is about. And then on the left, you see some guidance for the axis. The biggest number of newspapers sold in a month is 26,000. So the axis needs to go from 0 to at least 26,000. But obviously you will not have space to start from 1 to 26,000. So you have to divide it by 1,000, and therefore you have 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, right up to 20,000. Okay? That's the y-axis. And then you have the months. Again, you have January, February up to June. Now note that you have to make your bar charts consistent. In other words, if you look at the squares, after the first square, which is on 0, January takes 2 columns. And then you leave 2 columns, you go to February, leave another 2 columns, you go to March until you get to June. So the drawings will be consistent and easy to understand. Okay? You need to pick a sensible scale for this axis. In this example, we've chosen to make each bar 2 squares wide with a 2 square gap between them. Each gap is, that is on the y-axis, each gap is 2,000 newspaper. So from 0 to 2 is 2,000, from 0 to 4 is 4,000, and so on until you get to 26,000. Up the y scale. In case you're asking why am I calling it the y scale, is because we have an adage that guides us. You say enter and go upstairs. X comes before a y. So x-axis go across at the bottom, y-axis go upstairs. Drawing bar charts. Use a ruler to draw the bar chart. Make sure the bars are all the same width and that the gaps between the bars are equal. One of the reasons why I suggest you get your own book, a drawing book that is ruled in square grids, is simply because it's bigger and it's easier to use. And of course you can scale it either up or down depending on what you want to do. Okay? And there is your bar chart. The title, a graph to show newspaper sales over 6 months period. We know that it's in thousands, yeah? And then the y-axis, that is from 0 to 24, going up. And then the x-axis is the months from January to June. Drawing line graphs. The main steps for drawing the line graphs are choosing what axis will represent, choosing a scale for the axis, and plotting the points. So you have to think ahead when you're doing these things. Let's look at the example. The growth of a tree over a period of 10 years is shown in the table on the right. Show this data on a line graph. Why a line graph? Because you're not comparing a number of elements at the same time. You're comparing changes over time. So only a line graph will be appropriate. So one, the line graph will need to show the year and the trunk diameter. Do you remember what diameter is? Yes, the distance across. 2, the diameter of the trunk and the year are what the two axes will represent. By the way, some of you will know, but if you don't, then know now that when tree grows, it grows outside from the inside. So each year it expands. Although, of course, it grows upstairs, but it's the trunk that tells you the age of the tree. Okay, and on the right there you have the figures you have to use. Okay, you know, year 0, it's 3. Year 2, it increases by 2 from 3 to 5. Year 4, it increases by 2 to 4. And then year 6, there was a slight slow in the growth. And then year 8 again, it achieved its 2, I'll call it centimeter growth. And then in year 10 again, there was a slight slow in the growth. So all of these things, if you cut the tree across with a chainsaw or something and you look inside it, you will see the marks for each year. So you see that when you're doing maths, you're not just learning how to use figures, but you're learning a whole load of stuff. You're learning English, you're learning botany, science, you're learning geography. So it's important that you understand the figures you're using. Example on drawing line graphs. So work out the scale of the axis first, and then the trunk diameters needs to go up to at least 12 inches. So let's say we're working in inches. The highest diameter should be recorded. Add labels to your axis. Make sure you include the trunk diameters from 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. If you use 1 square to represent 1 inch, you need at least 12 squares for this axis. The year needs to go from 0 to 10. Each square represents a year. So, how do we do this? You mark off, starting from 0 for both, the growth, which is from 3 right up to 12. And then of course you see the period involved: year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5, year 6, year 7, year 8, year 9, year 10. But it's alternative. So you go from 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Once you've plotted the points, join them with a straight line. When you're plotting the point, make sure you mark it clearly, but not too much, because it can distort the graph you want to plot really. The point markers are only there to guide you when you're drawing your graphs, and then you use straight lines to join them up. Practice questions at 2. Question 1 and question 2. A company sells cars in different regions of the UK. The table shows the number of cars it has sold over the past 6 months. Draw a bar chart to display this information. So you can see that question 1 is about bar chart, because you're just comparing figures, right, about something that were sold in different areas. Question 2 now, let's see what we need to draw. The amount of water left in the hot water tank of a house over the course of a day is shown in the table below. This shows that it's over time, say from 6 o'clock in the morning to 6 o'clock in the evening, or from 600 hours to 1800 hours. You remember your clock. And those are the figures. So obviously you need to draw a line graph. Practice question 3. The average monthly rent of a town over 20 years as shown on the table below. What kind of graph do you think you need to draw? Your answers are shown, that's the next slide, for the 3 questions. Please make sure whenever you answer a question you go through and make sure you have not missed any important information. For these questions, your graphs may not look exactly like the ones drawn here. For example, you might have to use a different scale for your axis, but at a glance it should tell you the information it represents. Drawing pie charts. You need to know how to draw pie charts. Start by working out the angles of each section. Then accurately draw a circle using a pair of compasses and fill in the sections using a protractor. James works at a tourist information center. The table shows the native language of the tourists who visit the center in the last month. And on the right you see there are English, German and French. So what they want to know is to draw a pie chart to display this data, in other words the proportion of tourists by language. The pie chart will need 3 sectors, 1 for each language spoken. Point 2, divide 360 by the total number of tourists to find the angle that represents 1 tourist. So 50 plus 25 plus 15 is equal to 90. 36 divided by 90 is equal to 4. So to draw the pie chart, find the angles for each language by multiplying the angle of 1 tourist by the number of tourists who speak that language. So that's your layout for your chart. Languages: English, 50 times 4 degrees equals 200 degrees. German, 25 times 4 degrees is equal to 100 degrees. And then French, 15 times 4 degrees is equal to 60 degrees. Next, draw a full circle and fill in each section accurately using a protractor. And then label each section with the thing that it represents. Here is the example. You have English, 200, German, 100 degrees, French, 60 degrees. Question set 3. The table below shows the type of 180 houses built in 2018. You have the type there: bungalow, terraces, semi-detached, detached, and then you have the figures. You're given an example. Houses, angles, 30 degrees. So, what type of chart do you think you need to draw? The circle is an indicator, and your answer is shown there. I've given you the image of a type of protractor you can get if you can find it. A 360 degrees protractor will help you to work out the angles very easily, but if you don't, then you have to do with your protractor, but then you will need to have calculated your angles and the size of each sector before you do this. Lesson summary. This lesson was about learning how to read and understand briefs or instructions or questions, and how to draw charts, graphs and pie charts. Please answer the following questions based on your experience. Normally I'll just make a list of what you're supposed to have learned. In this case, another way of making sure you enforce your learning is to answer some questions by yourself. I've helped you here with 4 questions. Did you complete all the practice test questions? Because those practice tests are very important in reinforcing your learning. Question 2, did you draw all the charts and graphs accurately? That is obvious. Did you identify any area you need to improve on? That is, when you check your answers, you will know where you went right or wrong, and then you know what to do. If you did, please go through the relevant section carefully on the video and make your improvements. And when you do it, don't forget to congratulate yourself with a pat on the back. That's important. That is your lesson for this week. You've got a lot to do because this week's activity is about producing something other than just answering questions. So you see that maths is not just about calculating figures. It's about working with information, which I call brief, or sometimes they call it project specs, and then read it carefully and make your notes, underline important words.